D&D at its core is just mainly a game where a bunch of people sit around a table and go on an adventure. And since it's mainly fantasy, but there's different types of worlds that you can do adventures in, it could be like, there's like a sci-fi one, there's a Pokemon one, there's all these other ones that you can just do, and it's actually quite fun, that I find anyways. And like, to explain the game itself, you need to explain like a basis of the game, because there's so many different types that have different world rules that go with it. Because like, they're up to, I think, version 5 now, and since it's been going on for like a good while, and they'd have points where it'd be like, oh, I know the one that I tend to use is Pathfinder, which is like a step up from 3.5, and those are just different types of rules. But Pathfinder tends to be like more complex with certain rules and more finite in what it's supposed to be doing. So I like that aspect of it, but with like 5 and like 4E, it's like they made it easier, I think, for people to understand, which I suppose that's good, but for the people who like the complexities of the game, then the previous versions are a lot more fun. But to start off with the game, you need to roll out a character, which you would take, depending on what the DM or Dungeon Master would say. It's usually, I think you roll 46s, so that's 4 6-sided dice, and sometimes you'll re-roll the ones and sometimes you won't, but you take away the lowest and add those up and then put what's added up as a stat, and you roll that, I think, 7 or 6 times, then you drop the lowest, and then those are your stats that you could put in to your character sheet. Might actually be best if I actually get a character sheet. Okay, so now this is my character sheet, and right up here for Pathfinder is where you put the stats. And my character is an Inquisitor, which I think is an advanced class, so it's not in the core classes. But yeah, what you do is you take the stats and place them in the stat place depending on where you think would be best for your class that you're picking. Like, a rogue would want more dexterity than strength, but if you're a melee character, you want more strength than charisma. Constitution is important for everyone because that's health. But then you'd also pick your race, and your race gets bonuses to certain stats, so depending on what class you wanted to be, you'd pick that class for, you pick that race depending on the class you want to do. So if you want to do a mage, it's probably best to pick an elf, because they tend to have like higher wisdom and intelligence but lower charisma, because they're weak, frail things in D&D. But like, if you wanted to be a warrior, maybe like a half-orc would be better, because they have high constitution, and if you're going into the fight just charging in with melee weapons, then you might want a high health to survive that. And yeah, and like, everything that happens in the game is determined by dice rolls, so if I wanted to convince someone that I was actually a monkey wearing the clothes of an Inquisitor, I could be like, oh, I want to do this, but it'd be a bluff check, because there's skills on the side as well. There's skills right here, and depending on the rank you have, or the level you have, for example, like an Inquisitor has 1d8 so 1 8-sided dice to decide their hit points, I think, as well as their ranks. I can't remember what dice I used, but I know for a fact that I can't have more than 8 in my ranks, so it's that. And since I was level 7, I believe, when I did this, I'd have 10 per level. So I'd have 70 points to spend, but I can't have more than 8 in any one rank. So there's a lot of and like you'd pick feats that give your character a bonus and like all this stuff. And character creation is mainly like, it takes a little while when you're not used to it, and it still takes a little while when you're used to it. But like, after character creation, the game begins, and in the game it's a whole bunch of mess, and like you could do pretty much, it's like an open world. You can do whatever you really want to do. Like you can talk to characters that the DM just puts into play, like, oh, there's an innkeeper, and you'd be like, oh, I want to talk to the innkeeper. And you can be like, oh, innkeeper, this food was terrible. And the innkeeper would be like, well, what'd you expect coming into my inn? Kind of deal. And it tends to be really fun and ridiculous, because I know at one point one of my friends decided that it'd be a good idea to intimidate a store owner who turned out to be a level 7 mage, like wizard, and we were only, I think, level 2. So the shop owner, who was a wizard, used fireball on that character, and the character got poofed into dust, and they had to make a new one. So a character dying in D&D is pretty, like, you don't want it to happen, but it might happen if none of your party like is really a healer, because you need health a lot. That's why it's always good to be a healer. Support roles just tend to be a good thing, unless all of your party is support roles. But only then it'd be good if you were doing a undead campaign, because all healing spells do massive damage to undead because they're already dead and their health is negative, so you're killing them upwards. It's weird. It's just like, the main thing is you roll up a character, then you travel a world that the game master has built with that character, and you determine what you can do and what you cannot do with rolls. And the d20 is the main dice, because it's like the skill dice. You roll it for everything, pretty much. And 1 is bad, 20 is good. So if you roll a 1, it's a critical fumble. I think you have to roll to confirm again, but sometimes it depends on the DM. But if you get a natural 20, you instantly kill anything, because it's just like, oh my god, I did it perfectly. But like, if you roll a 1, you can get a fail, and that can end with some pretty terrible things, like a death of your character, which happened, because it's never fun when your character dies, and if it's your own fault for killing the character because you weren't able to roll a high number, then you just kind of left sitting in the table while everyone else is playing with their characters, and you're just dead. So there's nothing you can do.